This video is going to be mostly for my notes. Interesting, I watched this video with Elon Musk and I realized I've had better answers for so long. This is why I get so frustrated that this game is happening and people are trying to crush the people who have been battling through so many things for so long that they don't even realize it. And then they take advantage of them when they're going through all of that and they act like they understand it when they don't put anywhere near as much effort into things. You guys have no idea what you're really doing here. Anyway, citizen journalism. Now that's an attempt, and Elon talking about direct democracy and citizen journalism. Citizen journalism is web forums, and there's another social media that's perfect. I can't remember what they're called. If it's kind of like, they talk about being able. I think it's LinkedIn that's talking about being able to combine different journals and sort through different journals. That's looking at different pieces of text and how you're linking some different things together. You're going to need some different analytics or AI kind of based tools for searching through that. Just like I've talked about for CI squared and product improvement, you want to be able to use AI and natural language parsing and tokenization to look at what things are being talked about most in terms of product recommendations. You also want to source that for who had the first idea and when. And so all of those things I've been talking about for a long time. Interesting that, I'm going to skip ahead here, interesting that people will probably be most impressed by the simplest part of my plan because, or at least in Donald Trump's space, because they talk about wanting to do something about immigration. Well, the quickest, easiest way to come up with a new answer for immigration is just to charge all people who are here illegally 5 to 10% more in taxes. Now, that's not a difficult thing to do if you understand what can be done with technology, but you have to organize the pieces of the system so the information can actually flow so that you can do the analytics to achieve the goal. And we are not positioned for that. That's the continual goal of our society, is to position our complex infrastructures to allow us to manage in creative ways. And so here's an exercise in why this is so true and why this open source mesh approach that I'm talking about positions us for that. First of all, you need an identity matrix. You need that identity matrix to be tied to your career, your field. You need your tax system to automatically be associated with that. And when payroll is issued, you look at that person's key flags, because you could have people who are tax exempt for different reasons or have specific types of purchases they qualify for a medical reason. For example, somebody who has skin grafting, especially on their feet, should be able to get those high-end blister band-aids for free if they're working different jobs, because their feet need those high-end bandages if they want to work those different jobs. I get hardcore blisters on my feet, and I've spent, throughout the course of since my burns and the different jobs that I've worked, I'm sure I've spent $1,000, $2,000, some odd dollars, but that's half of the price of a nicer car or something like that. So think about, or I could have reinvested in trying to go back to school or something like that. Think about what you're doing to people by not trying to build this more creative system. You can actually provide better medical care, better routing of all the different things by compartmentalizing the pieces for strategy and security. For both of those reasons, you want to do that. And you can build these identity products with all these features. They're the best place to consolidate these features, but we want to talk about these open source grids, and you want to be able to position it so that somebody can add something to this underlying architecture that powers another product in this marketplace on top of these levels, and you want to protect that free market, not let that be extorted by key layers. And so I've got a much more democratic model which talks about how we can position that for success. And if somebody approaches the network and says, hey, we can build this solution this way, and it gets approved by one of these channels, notice how there are different channels that can try to approve somebody. So they're not just trying to impress just one group. They can impress different groups and start this process, start the bigger conversation. More likely to get people noticed that way. So again, you could look at people who are getting paychecks. You could say, here's this person, they don't have a American citizen credential, and they're getting paid from these parties, and you can build automated solutions, but you got to tie your banking systems together then in a very specific way so that your analytics can be run from this central system and then flow out to the alerts to the account holders and to the banks and different things like that, and you can route the money. If somebody's receiving checks, now maybe this happens for a month, maybe we only have this on like a monthly process or something like that. So there's a little bit of time people can get away with being here illegally, but it's only going to be like a month, and then they're all going to know, well, I can come here illegally or I can drag my feet on this process, but then I'm going to be paying 5 to 10% more in taxes, which to me seems like a way smarter idea than paying all the money to deport people without a plan like I'm talking about. You could just implement a financial penalty. We could make a bunch of money to pay for any more deportation we'll have to do, and we'll incentivize the people who want to be here for the right reasons to hurry up with the process and become legal citizens. And then you don't have to spend all this money in deportation. We should streamline that. That's a profitable way of approaching a solution. Profitable way of approaching a solution, not an expensive way of approaching a solution, which maybe tears families apart and makes life harder for a lot of people. We could make this easier for people and be like, yes, but we need you contributing. We're going to be charging you an extra 10% until you can hurry up and get these pieces done. Now, everybody has maybe a 2-year warning period while we get these systems in place and advance our infrastructure enough to succeed at all these better management strategies, which are much more cost effective and more proactive. And so we've got all that opportunity. Now let's whiz through how I know how to position us for success in regulating AI. The same sets of features. Agents are specialized APIs for using large language models. That's one thing that we need to do, is figure out which contexts when you have an agent request an answer from a large language model, if it's just text-based and things like that, that's not that big of a deal. But if it's determining if the AI determines it needs to reach out to another agent to perform a task, and you've got these networks of agents that connect to different systems, and AI is driving these large language models are driving this, but it's got to pick then what agent it needs to use to execute the task. And do you see how we can talk about very complex systems and ways of regulating this when we talk about the pieces and how it works on the world stage? Then you're going to have employees that will understand ways to help grow your technology. You're going to see that in the workforce. You're going to see all kinds of people helping you to grow your company because they're going to see new opportunities and they're going to be hungry to help succeed or contribute to something in their career. And you're going to be able to grow your team faster because you're going to have a large audience thinking about how to apply your technology and grow your technology, which means it'll be implemented faster. So now the addendums for the multiple different models that can exist, I think we'll probably get to a point where they'll combine some of these models on big platforms together and they'll be optimized, but they'll be models that are slightly tweaked for different types of purposes, whether it's research or story writing or, there are these different things. And these models, they kind of spider web together. And some of these things aren't that we don't have many concerns for what we need to regulate. But depending on these tasks and how they're operating, you need to position the cybersource to be able to intelligibly sort through that. And this is one of the things we need to do, is we need to have this overarching strategy with Cyberforce, and you want key members from different companies to be able to analyze things. Like, have companies protect where they're at with their IP and everything, and maybe it's just Cyberforce then that can go through, because you can't have somebody who's in the private sector for another company analyze key pieces of the proprietary technology in that case. But for the security levels, you do want that. The security levels, you do want that. For standardization of key infrastructural pieces or APIs, you do want that. And so this is an intelligent move for us to go this direction, where we have this cross-observability through the private sector feathered together with the Cyberforce, as in my model. Now, citizen journalism, Elon, you're trying to talk about citizen journalism being part of a direct democracy. Now, yes, direct democracy, you have to figure out how to perfect the market such that you have a thriving ecosystem of product opportunities to support this advanced voting system where we get rid of mail-in ballots. You kind of were back and forth there in this video where you talk about, well, I think mail-in ballots are a good idea, but you can vote more, you can vote early, and so that kind of helps people. But we need an internet-based system. That's the best system. You also said you were worried about the voting machines and their vulnerability with hacking. We can make hacking impossible. That needs to be a goal in the AI age. Now, you're talking about how so far Starlink hasn't been hacked, and you can just try to keep things secret in terms of how your architecture works, but there's a way to build and call that security, but there's a way to talk about how the key security layers. Now, you're still going to have encryption for other levels of your technology stack. I'm just talking about this very robust piece for very key layers relevant to medical records or psychology records if you integrate those tools into web portals through social media, as well as financial systems and other personally identifiable information. That stuff you want this really robust cross-compartmentalized strategy so that it's not just one company determining how somebody's able to hail a cab, for example, because you don't necessarily need somebody's identity to be a part of that transaction until it's the money piece. And so there are things that you could do. We can talk about whether or not that's necessary or that's an overreaction, because realistically, if the computer just knows it in the background, there are alerts that you could run if the police are looking for somebody or there are stalkers that we worry about. You can build very complex systems that can help send out alerts for people. And then you imagine that somebody has like a restraining order. You can make it such that the person who has the restraining order can get an alert. It's like, hey, this person is within this many feet of you. This person is here. And so you could do subtle alerts like that, and you can come up with a right way or right contextual way to build that system. But again, those are very complex conversations. We have to talk about how we feather together this mesh of key pieces to enable this architecture as a society. There's far more promising what we can do there than otherwise. But citizen journalism, there are companies that are already trying to do this with forums and social medias. That is kind of like what citizen journalism is. Try to talk about how technologies are simple, not just say, oh, we have citizen journalism as our approach, because other companies are really doing that already. They're trying to sort through this. Could you make a better system for that? Yes, and I've come up with specific features that help to do that, with sorting comments based upon who's actually trying to follow along and building an interactive learning journey, while you're also trying to follow along with different pitches you think are cool. If you really think it's cool, you should want to learn more about it. And before you throw your opinion around, if you really respect it, if you really care, you'll be excited that the world has made it easy for you to do those things. With respect to your time in all of these ways, you build a giant market for building really cool tools and interactive videos and all these different things to help credentialize people in diverse ways. And you can optimize a market for that opportunity, which is exactly what I've set out to do. Because I know it's more important that we talk about the ecosystem of opportunity and mobilizing a bigger team, when we'll have more diversity of ideas and we'll perfect more things faster. So yes, you can add unique grouping and sorting strategies to that, all of this. This is exactly where I am. And then let's look at 53 minutes. You talk about the birth rate in education. I have perfect answers here. Now, I wrote this down because this is part of what I was concerned about with not knowing where we're at, and partly because of people like you, Elon Musk. You're talking about we need to switch to renewable energy, and people have used that as part of their marketing strategy. Well, that affects how people live their lives. And then they start to become very conscientious of all the garbage that they're throwing away, and they start to think we're definitely overpopulating the earth. And so you get those different things. You hear people talk about these different things. We need to have a very sophisticated system. Those leaders need to support a very sophisticated system for us to analyze the materials consumption and the biochemical relationships to how our consumption is driving the environment or other environmental toxins that could affect our health. And so those are all things that you need to have as part of that. Where to start? Hit a target in any direction. You want to start with this open source mesh, with talking about how we build this advanced grid and position us to talk intelligently about how we combine pieces of data for creative management solutions, like what I was talking about with the illegal immigrants piece. I have a way better strategy than deporting people. You can make some money versus have a huge expense. Way better strategy. Just deporting people and building walls, we're pretty much at the same point ancient China was at, and they probably will always be able to say they did it way better than us, unless we implement these technological tools, and then very yes. But that's what leading an AI-based society would look like, is this open source mesh and compartmentalization of key data points and how they are accessed by AI and otherwise, and we define these addendums that determine how markets come together to represent themselves in a panel. You make that a part of your government. You talk about how you have different ways. Fortune 500 board of expertise could be like, we think that somebody sold us on our network that there's a better way for you to operate, and it's going to open up this private sector opportunity, and because of our private sector expertise, we see that. You could have a public sector say, we need to do this because it's a really good decision and it's going to enable us to manage in a different way, and that's going to help us solve this problem. And we agree, we voted, we agree that's the best way to approach a solution. You could have the major market vertical be impressed by somebody who comes through the strategic pivot pitch system that says, hey, we're going to tell this person's success story and how they helped us revolutionize or expand the reach of this infrastructure to accomplish these amazing things, and we gave them this great job and featured it through this The Apprentice-like chase, while we gave them an 8-month feature story to tell their story of what their idea was and how well they could promote it and build the sophistication into the idea to allow success. And because they impressed us so much, we gave them equity. Or because they couldn't quite do it, and we have got this other person on our team that finished these pieces and thought they recognized them, and so now they're this person's leader. The person who had the idea is now getting a chance to grow from the person who recognized the idea, and so they just ended up with a really good job, not equity, but a really good job and the growth opportunity they were looking for. And the Apprentice and Shark Tank could feature that, and then all of these different things. That probably wouldn't get a Shark Tank finish. Shark Tank finish would be when you get offered equity, and you could have different companies compete over this person, but the key team that has that approached them first and sponsored them, you count that as like automatically, it's like an invisible 5%. Like even if some other team offers them 50%, they get the opportunity to match it, but they match it at offering 5 or 10% less because they sponsored the story. They found them, they gave them this chance. And so that incentivizes companies to try to say, hey, this person's got a great idea, we're going to have early access to this idea. But other companies can still try to compete over that, so that advantages the person with the idea, because different companies competing over how great this idea is, and that promotes the person with the idea in a Shark Tank-like atmosphere. And so we can do this with our nation. It's a much more creative way to manage, not more creative, but it's a very creative way to apply these other creative approaches and management strategy. Now, how to help small business owners. Again, these infrastructures that I'm talking about, Target and Walmart and these big companies, they do have within their own networks a UPC system that they make their suppliers adhere to. But we need a bigger system than that, because otherwise we can't run advanced accounting analytics. If every company uses a slightly different product code, now most of them use the same code, but that needs to be a 100% unanimous thing. And notice how these accounting products and features, they're for other customers. There are a lot of their own customers because they're buying things anyway, but you can help them optimize their business if you work together on a UPC system. Now it's going to be easier for Amazon and Walmart and Target, for example, to maintain control of that system because they drive all the warehouse management system features. What's the best way to divide up the addendum definition in the relationship between the UPC sphere and how there are product improvement opportunities and the accounting sphere? And so you define that in these addendums, and I've talked about how this can grow and evolve by the people who have the ability to change, modify the addendums, and represent themselves through this extension of separation of powers. So that's where you start, Elon. That's a complex evolution of government. You don't have to reduce the costs so extensively that we don't have that we can pay off the national debt just that way. Yes, you want some of the money coming from that, but if we can just get it down a little bit and drive the value of these strategies, we can monetize the American way of life on the world stage, and you have a vector to then get other countries to be a little bit more similar to us, because we can say, we won't sell you these technologies. We're going to drive the huge profitability of this on the world stage, working like the American government, into how we work with the private sector, and then you get all of these nations in a very, very thorough way to operate in a more American way. It's better for security, it's better for access to opportunity, it's better for their economy. We can build this giant case, and then we can go and we can say, we need you to adhere to these security standards. You need to let us cross-observe this, or we can't sell you these chips. And if they don't want to agree to it, they're going to have to do all the work to build the industry, to build the chips themselves, and they're going to become smarter. And in the meantime, we're going to be just rocketing off into space at just an incredible rate. And so we're going to be way ahead, way, way ahead. We're going to achieve more growth than we ever have with this plan. So, how to help small businesses, open source nature. Here's a great idea for helping businesses, because here's somebody like Brandon with all these great ideas, but all this complex life, trauma to deal with. So I couldn't afford the early patent or trademark securing. We need some sort of an early stage to safeguard that if somebody has a great idea, and if they're making all these videos like this, they should have the opportunity to do that. Now, what's the right window of opportunity to protect somebody for? Because 5 years seems like too long. 3, you want it to be 1 year like a provisional patent, but that's a little too rushed. Maybe 3 is reasonable. If you Brandon comes out, I need to trademark these names, these symbols, and get a patent on this general technology stack. And I make that very, very vague starting out, but if I can put a lot of detail in that, you want that patent to be secure, and that's why I talk about the open versus closed collaboration states for the strategic pivot bid pages, and allowing to pick a team, like a Facebook groups team, to work on it in a more private way versus having it being completely public. And so there are lots of ways we can do this. Now again, we talked about border technology and all of this. What to do for disabled community? You get this system in place, and there are so much different research that people will be inspired to understand. And you want the people who are going to be using the features that are built for disabilities, especially advanced prosthetics or brain nerve interfaces, to be telling you. You want that feedback. It's like including it in a beta program. So if you have this combined product improvement strategy, as well and you have that ecosystem that you build and you promote, granted, I'm still talking about companies plugging into that, but now this helps to funnel a lot of their workload, so it makes it easier to focus on the really quality product improvement strategy instead of just running different tests and getting feedback. You can build a bigger system so that really happens automatically at a much grander scale by attaching it to product codes. And again, you need this universal product coding success. That's why I talk about this overall strategy for UPC to move this direction being relevant directly to continuous improvement. And so again, there's that. Ban lobbyists in DC. Best thing you can do is feather together this open source mesh and get people to get companies, put this Fortune 500 board and the expertise in a place where they can say, hey, these are the projects we need to be going after. So they don't have to lobby for that. They don't have to lobby for green energy grants and all this different stuff. They'll be able to define project criteria, and companies will qualify for that, and then they can get the public, and different companies can dump money into it. Different people will do it for different reasons. It will boost their retirement. It offsets retirement costs. Okay? And so all of these things are useful strategies for how we come together, and they all depend on this open source mesh. How to promote small business atmosphere. Again, if you're building these portals where you can combine finance and payroll, and you help to understand the immigration relationship there, and employee discounts and coupons and wallets and all this stuff, and identity products, and how we need that, and banks need to be able to verify income, and credit cards need to be able to verify income for loans and credit cards and all these different things. You want this system built. It helps every business. Okay? There's a way to build it that helps every business. It's so valuable if you build it like I'm talking about. Alright, that's enough for this video. I pretty much just wanted to get some ideas out. This is more for my records than anything else.